Hassan Piker's demo is wider than Dems think. This is from Brianna Perez. We'll watch this. Hassan Piker's demo is wider than Dems think.
Fundamental misunderstanding that establishment Dems have about Hassan Piker that I have yet to see addressed. And that is this myopic understanding of who makes up his audience. And this is a big focus of even individuals that are urging Democrats to take Hassan Piker more seriously or just not write him off completely. And that's this idea that Hassan Piker's audience, the people he gets through to, are a demographic that the DNC doesn't get through to. Primarily younger, mostly men in their early 20s. But you know who else is a huge fan of Hassan Piker? My mother. And no, I will have you know that it's not because she finds him handsome. Apparently, he's not her type. But to be clear, she and I don't see eye to eye on a lot of stuff, politically speaking. And that's kind of my point. He's speaking to a much broader range of people than many Democrats and pundits really seem to realize. She, by all accounts, should be the Democratic Party's bread and butter. Lifelong blue voter, middle class, mid-60s, raised in a blue state, living in a purple state, grew up on Bill Maher, who she was a big fan of until, in my opinion, way too recently, who even overseas managed to raise a toddler who recognized two people on TV by name by the age of 2. Michelle from Full House and President Kinton. And yet, she's traded in Bill Maher for Hassan Piker. To be fair, this is obviously anecdotal evidence. And specifically in my mom's case, the reason she knows about Hassan Piker is because he featured one of my clips on his stream. So she looked him up. But after watching that and then one other video of his, she was hooked. But also, she's not the only boomer.
This is a very common experience. This is why at first when we went to rallies, it was just young people. And now it's both young people and their parents. It's very normal. And the reason for why this is such a common experience, a commonly shared experience by many of you in this chat as well, many in this community as well, is because the message resonates regardless. Like, I'm not tailoring my commentary specifically towards young men. Although, when I first started this, I was a young man. Now I'm 34, still technically young in comparison to my counterparts, but certainly it wouldn't say I'm a young man. Don't feel like a young man anyway. But the point I'm making is, like, the resentments that I am communicating, both against the Republican Party and the growth of fascism in this country, but also the feckless ineptitude of the Democrats, that resentment exists out there in the ether. That resentment exists in the ether. And it's very frustrating that a lot of Democrats, a lot of consultants, a lot of campaigners, a lot of analysts, the lanyard class, they refuse to recognize that there is real resentment. Or rather, they want to not listen to that resentment at all because they're banking on the idea that harm reduction will be enough to carry over their neoliberal, corporate-sponsored Democratic candidates over the finish line. Yeah, I saw this. Notice how Hassan is described in purely negative terms in this poll, and campaigning with him is still net positive by 10 points. That's insanely good. A plurality of Democratic primary voters approve of El-Sayed inviting Hassan Piker to campaign rallies. Recently, Democratic U.S. Senate candidate Dr. Abdul El-Sayed announced that Hassan Piker, a left-wing political commentator, would join him at campaign rallies on college campus on April 7th. El-Sayed's opponents have criticized those planned rallies, accusing Hassan Piker of anti-Semitism and highlighting past controversial remarks. El-Sayed has argued that criticism of Israel should not be confused with anti-Semitism, and he defended those rallies of Piker. Do you approve or disapprove of Dr. Abdul El-Sayed inviting Hassan Piker to join those rallies? Some would approve at 25%, strongly approve at 15%, don't know at 30%, and somewhat disapprove at 17%, strongly disapprove at 13%.
In my family who's heard of him and likes him. I think one of the reasons people are underestimating Hassan's audience and reach is because they are fundamentally misunderstanding how media works these days. They're looking specifically at his Twitch streaming audience, which sure, probably largely young men in their early 20s. But I would posit to say the vast majority of Hassan Piker watchers don't actually watch him live. I get him on my feeds on verticals. My mother watches him on YouTube. And I think that just makes it a lot harder to quantify and track his very real reach. And by the way, this has very real effects. Just today, she told me about a candidate she had just heard about that she loved, Abdul El-Sayed. And why had she heard of him? Because of Hassan Piker. So not only is Hassan speaking to demographics that the establishment Dems have yet to capture, he is speaking to the demographics that they take 100% for granted. And they're clearly severely underestimating who exactly in this country is feeling so much discontent with them and their policies. Dems aren't just out of touch with people they have yet to excite or capture, they're falling out of touch with the people they've always assumed would be there.
Yeah, 100%. No notes. Because once again, this is in line with the same thing that I was talking about before, where people have this like weird fantasy about, oh, if someone were to encounter Hassan's message in the real world, would beat him to death with hammers. A real working class champion would kill him, and it's very stupid. That's a very stupid argument. Here, let's take a look at these takes real quick. Dems want left-leaning podcasters and streamers as mouthpieces, just like right-wing podcasters and streamers. Yeah.
Surrounding Hassan Piker and whether or not presidential candidates should go on his podcast, I realized that centrist Democrats, the Democratic Party, Democratic strategists, they want access to streamers, they want access to podcasters, specifically the audiences that these figures have, and they want a Joe Rogan of the left, but they specifically want a Joe Rogan of the left. By that I mean they want someone like Joe Rogan who had Trump on his podcast and who did not push back on Trump, who did not ask, clarifying questions. So they want someone like that on the left. They want an audience like that. They don't want someone like Hassan Piker who pushes back. They don't want, someone who will really ask questions and call them out, call them in, whatever you want to call it. They don't want that. They want to be on a podcast, much like Joe Rogan, much like Theo Vaughn, and be able to just say whatever without any pushback. They want sheep. They don't want people who ask questions.
True. And the entire backlash by centrist Dems is born out of that frustration. The frustration that they have to sit there and listen to someone that isn't in group, right? They have to sit there and listen to someone who can hold the attention of some of the electeds and can take your frustrations directly to them. And they're very worried about that. They're very, very worried about that.